Hi everyone, and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global Podcast. I'm Kirsty McGowan. I'm here today with Carlos Casanova.
Hello, Kirsty.
Mark Smalley.
Hi, Kirsty.
And today we're chatting with Ian Clayton, who I'm sure is a familiar name to many of our listeners. Good morning, Ian.
Oh, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Ian.
Well, morning for me anyway.
Yeah, and not only a familiar face, but a familiar voice as well. Because I've always considered Ian to have the golden voice in IT service management.
Oh, there we go. We're going to go down the Michael Caine route, aren't we?
but I haven't heard your golden voice for quite a while now. What you been up to?
Oh, wow, yeah. Well, I'm not sure if you followed or you recall, but a couple of years ago, I went off and worked for G2, G3, about the time when they were acquired by Capita, and about the time when Capita formed Axelos and went into the joint venture with ITIL. And the primary reason for that was because I was struggling, and I think I openly said I was struggling with this, how do you get people to change their, as Paul Wilkinson says, their attitude, behavior, and culture. Yeah, every time I was leaving a project, people were reverting to their old habits. So the idea of using some of that type of technology and thinking, gamification, simulations, was intriguing. So I spent some time with those folks. Excellent time, excellent team, and straight in the field again, using these techniques to try and adjust, not just test, but actually adjust large companies and move them bit by bit towards what we thought was a more service management, customer-centric approach. And then this past year, I've returned to my writing. So there'll be a new version of the USM Pacquiao, an updated version published by TSO any minute now, I think the next couple of months.
Great. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people waiting to see what you've changed in there, Ian.
Yeah, Ian, sorry to interrupt. I guess, what sort of, obviously it's a large set of information, but I guess at the highest level, what sort of new things, new concepts have you sort of introduced into this latest version?
Yeah, that's interesting because it is a huge. It's like a doorstop. It's 600 pages and it's difficult. Someone was kind enough to say it's a Rosetta Stone because it doesn't really invent anything new. What it does, it glues pieces together. That was the idea. It was originally written as a where did I put things and who had that good idea and what book was it in or what presentation, so I could put my hand on it. And then it turned into a big key that unlocks a tremendous wealth of great research, reference materials that have been out there for many years. I mean, going back to the 1960s. Some of them, they just talk about bits and pieces and elements of what today could be useful, and some of them are fundamental, foundational pieces. So that was, being a big piece, the challenge was how do I make it more palatable? Because I think that the amount of time people have, the amount of commitment or passion has shortened again dramatically. I don't know whether this thing's just going to disappear in like a puff, like a black hole, and people have no time. But that's what they were saying to me. I have no time. It's got lots of good stuff, but unless you make it easier to get in and out and answer a question, it sits on a shelf. So that was what I was looking at. And some of the things were more information on the outside in and more on the method on how you unlock that customer-centric piece without being accused of being, say, proposing a culture to customer. More to discuss how disruptive and valuable pieces like DevOps come into play. I just have a particular view on DevOps, having been a product manager in the past. And I think less on the systematic moving pieces and definitely more on the tactical new language that you see the business use. Touch points, moments of truth, moments of misery, moments of magic, and the service experience.
Excellent.
Now, this topic of getting people to change their behavior, that reminded me, I've just looked it up. A couple of years ago, I asked you to contribute to a publication by giving me questions that you think people should be thinking about. And I'm just going to read one of the questions here that you gave me. Is ITSM really a case of implementing something, or is it more a cultural shift and management philosophy? Now, what I'm interested in and this was 2 or 3 years ago, what I'm interested in is what kind of change have you seen in most of us consultants, getting people to change their behaviour? Have you seen any new kind of techniques that we could benefit from?
Wow, I'd forgotten about that. Well, I'm an anti-implementation person. I mean, the word implement, to me, again, working with the business a bit and applying the outside-in thinking, and it is a discipline because we're all inside-out thinkers. And inside-out means, what do you want me to do? How do I go about that task? Outside-in adds the, why am I doing it? And typically trying to look at it from the view of someone else. ITSM, to me, has always been the application of service management concepts and methods, like a set of thinking, to the challenges of an IT department. That means you can drop the IT off the front and put something else in there. That's how I discuss the enterprise. It's the same thing. It's the application of service management thinking to the challenges of an enterprise, or for a fish and chip shop, or and then when you look at that letter that we drop in, it's, well, what would a fish and chip shop, what would an enterprise, what are their imperatives, what issues are they tackling today, and how can you go into your box of tricks that's service management and pull a few gems and apply them so people get a result in that attention span?
I just thought about gamification. Of course, you've had some fairly recent experience with gamification. What kind of things did you learn from that?
Gamification. It's all about setting forward some sort of altruistic end goal, a personal goal, a selfish personal goal, or a personal goal to help a third party. So rather than it be a corporate goal, hey, if we all do this, I'll set a quest. So typically it has 3 or 4 moving parts. There's a quest, there's a credit you get when you complete the quest or task or challenge. There's a bank that you put it in. There's a conversion mechanism to turn those points into a badge or money or something else. You can convert it. And the conversion, from an altruistic perspective, could be, I convert it and donate to a charity. Now suddenly you've got a completely different motivator than please tidy up your desk. It's like teenagers. Please tidy up your room, else you can't go out the weekend. And what happens is parents fold because there's more peace and quiet in letting them out than there is in keeping them in.
Exactly.
So how do we get? Go on.
Yeah, it's a bit like Dan Pink in his book Drive. He talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose as being 3 things that improve performance and satisfaction. And you're appealing to the purpose bit, aren't you?
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I do with clients all the time. I tell them, there has to be a sense of ownership there. Once there's a sense of ownership, you start getting those other pieces, because this, past the financial component, if you're within reason, people are going to do their job and that's it. And there's going to be a small subset of those that are really looking to advance. But once you're doing something, no matter how good, if you don't feel there's a sense of ownership there, that it's contributing to I don't want to say a higher good or whatever, even internally, if that's really the thing, and you're doing this and you're exerting all this energy, after a while, anyone's going to be like, oh, you know what? I'm just not going to do this anymore. Or I'm going to do something else instead. So yeah, I agree, Mark. I mean, Pink is definitely one of those that I reference all the time in some of those discussions.
Well, you've got a good book by I think Brian Burke, Gartner, Gamify. You've got the Dummy's Guide to Gamification. They're all very good books. There's plenty of resources on the web for that. And I agree, Carlos, that even from a leadership perspective, it's tough to keep driving the organization. You run out of gas eventually, or you get distracted because you've got 30 concurrent projects. They're all on fire, and you still got to try.
Fire.
Yeah. And yet someone said you've got to transform the organization, which is quite a push effort.
Yeah,
so
and I think all of us have worked in that consultancy space. When you go in there and you get the fire going, but as soon as you let go their hands and walk away, it all just slowly, or in some cases quickly, disintegrates, and they go back to square one again.
So let's loop that back. That's the benefit of outside in, and why I still serve on the outside in advisory board for the business side of the house, because you learn that they take you right down to the nano level. Yeah, they'll remind you, no, what's happening now? Who? What are they doing? And what are you doing to support them or help them? And it makes things real. And when you bring that in a room, so some of the workshops that I run, you bring that in a room and you say, I was at a major brewery on the West Coast last year, and you've small outfit, 30, 40 people, great folks, and great product. And you bring them in, and they're wondering why they're in the room. And then you bring in a situation, and the simple situation that they chose was menus not being available in their restaurant, which overlooks, and it's their flagship. The restaurant, like the brew pub type thing, but it's a fancy restaurant. It's great. Menus not being available on the tables. Do you think, well, so we're 15 minutes late. If the menu's not there, the beer's not there. If the beer's not there, the way they sell the beer and the food as a combo can't happen. The restaurant can't function. They all got it because they all go to the restaurant and drink beer. So they got it, and immediately it was, well, that's ridiculous. What's happening? That's an easy fix. Done. Tick.
Yeah, and it's funny, and that just made me think of one, and I can't recall where it was and who it was that was speaking to it, but they worked for like an oil refinery company, and they have the guys out on the rigs, a few miles out, and they're out there for what, 2 months, 3 months at a time, and they come in, clean up, visit their families, and go back out. And this individual, what he did is he knew that somebody was going to be flying in that morning from the rig. For whatever reason, meetings and stuff, and he had that individual come to the meeting. That they were doing some kind of workshop. It was a customer service type situation, service desk, that sort of thing. And the guy coming in was like, "Hey, I'm going to run back to the hotel, clean up, and then come in." And he's like, "No, I want you to come in exactly the way you came in from the rig." Loaded with grease and oil or whatever it was, just still with that, smell of petroleum. And he brought him into the front of the session or whatnot, and he said, "This is the individual that you're helping, day in, day out. When you don't do something, when something's not functional," and it was, in your face, there is a person on the end of you keeping those systems up, or whatever it was that they were discussing, and they had a face to that name, to that role that they dealt with that day.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's why he wanted them, don't come in nice and clean. I want you in the overalls, the big boots, the hard hat, the whole bit, so that they see who exactly that person is.
Well, when GM had Saturn car manufacturing, now I used to work for Ross Perot in the EDS days. One of the stories we were told was that, well, I won't go into the whole story, but that personalization, what they decided to do was stick on the windscreen of the cars they were making, those they knew, the name of the person and their persona, some basic information about them. And they discovered that there was a particular vehicle being made for an 80-year-old and what she would use it for is to drive the other 80-year-olds to and from the shops. The difference it made in the workers' attitude to putting that vehicle together was dramatic. They said, "No, stop the line. I don't think that's right," because they felt the consequence.
Just one thing to close with. There's some pretty big things happening for you this week. You've got a big launch going on. You just want to give us, in a nutshell, what you're launching this week.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the Service Management University is an online service that it's been. I used to provide this online learning resource to clients privately. Well, this version is trying to address some of the things that we've spoken about. There's so much information out there around the service management area. It's daunting. So the challenge was, how do you chop that up into palatable bites, chunks of information that people could consume? And given the 50-year age gap in the workforce that we see, from baby boomers like myself through to millennials, and the different learning styles and information processing styles, some people won't go further than their smartphone and YouTube and Google, and yet other people want a formal class structure. I had conversations with people who are pioneering the new learning management systems, and they were saying, we've moved from learning management like a school or college style structure, formal structure, to a learning engagement mechanism. So that's what the Service Management University tries to do. It's got a central brain mechanism, which is a navigation tool, a moving map, and you can search like you would on Google for something like Service Catalog. It would say, yeah, I've got that. Here's the definition of it. Do you want anything else? So the visitor drives. They can then go, yeah, what do you got? And if it's got something, it will say, well, I have a short 5-minute overview of that. I also, it's part of a lesson, which is a little bit more, could be up to 20 minutes, and it could be part of a course. So how far do you want to go? And that's how I've tried to put up as much as I can migrate from my head and my materials that I use online. And then I wanted to use the lynda.com type model of my classes were traditionally not cheap, and that can inhibit who gets access to them. So it's a low-cost model. It's a low-cost monthly.
So where can we find it?
You'll find it. It launches Tuesday, January the. I'm trying to do the math. 19. Yeah. Servicemanagement.university, and there's a video on the front page that will help folks, and we may include something here, Kirsty. I think you said that we'll have a look at that to see if we can help folks understand what's behind the scenes. So watch out for the Service Management Brain. That was my old secret sauce that's now available to everyone, and that means you can sort of have a look around the real service management landscape and find something you're interested in. Click, 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 and I try and write it to the 4S rule. Select, swipe, swipe, select, submit, which is what folks are used to. Oh, and there's also BAB, big ass button. That's the other rule. You know, so there's all these new best practices for. So yep, that's what I've been up to.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great talking to you today, Ian, and I'm sure we've got plenty of other topics we can bring you back on and discuss at a later date, because I know there's an awful lot of stuff in your head that people are interested in hearing about. So we'll do this again. Thanks a lot, and thanks Carlos and Mark for joining us today. It's been a great session.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.